Hi, my name is Sarah McEwen, and I am presenting on autism disorder, or abbreviation ASDS. So let's get started. So first off, what is autism? Autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disability that can cause significant social, communication, and behavioral challenges. There is often nothing about how people with ASD look that sets them apart from other people, but people with ASD may communicate, interact, behave, and learn in ways that are different from most other people. The learning, thinking, and problem-solving abilities of people with ASD can range from gifted to severely challenged. Some people with ASD need a lot of help in their daily lives, others need less. So, like dislikes, oh, yeah. So two major indicators. There's lots of indicators of autism, but two of the main ones are differences in communication/social interaction, and then also restricted behaviors. So this can be things like refusing to eat like certain textured foods. It can be things like refusing to play certain kinds of games, just having a lot of things in a certain area that are just like you will not do. You absolutely refuse. All right, and like it said in the first line, autism is a spectrum. So there's some high functioning autism and there's severe autism and there's people kind of in the middle. And autism spectrum disorder can cover a lot of different more specific diagnosis, like OCD, Tourette syndrome, depression, ADD, ADHD. So they're all of these are aspects of having autism spectrum disorder. And people can have multiple of these with autism. They can have just one. It really just depends on the person, and it looks a lot different in almost every person that has autism. So one of the most important things with autism is to make sure that the practices you're using are evidence-based practices. And the resource that I was using through one of our class websites gave a whole long list of evidence-based practices that will help students with autism, or individuals with autism, improve and exhibit better behavior and learn better in your classroom. And it's important that you go with evidence-based practices and not just hearsay, because there's a lot of information on the internet about autism and about what's helpful and what's not. And so it's important to make sure that the practices you're using to help the children with autism in your classrooms have actually proven to be useful and aren't just, I think you know what I'm saying, that they're not just something that somebody said on like a wiki article. So there was a ton of different, there's like 20 plus different strategies, but I just chose a few that I thought were easy to apply and really useful. So the first one is exercise, which might kind of seem like an odd evidence-based practice, but students with autism often act out, and when they exhibit this extremely and exhibit really intense behaviors. And when you give children with autism more chances to move around, they tend to work out some of their wiggles, and so they're more engaged in class, but also because they exercise, they're tired. And so if they have a meltdown or a tantrum, if something freaks them out, then the reactions aren't quite as severe because of that. Another good example, another good way to help children with autism is by modeling. And so modeling not only what assignments you want them to do, but modeling behavior. They're more likely to imitate behavior than they are just to learn it from you explaining. And so if they hit a child, instead of saying, no, don't hit, say, we don't, instead if you go, no, they're friends, you touch them softly and you show them how a right way to interact with someone is. Number 3 I thought was really interesting because people with autism often struggle in social situations. It's really important to get peers involved, and this can look like peer tutors, having different students in your classroom assigned to help work with them. But having peers reinforce proper behavior is really effective for students with autism and learning what is acceptable and what is not. Reinforcement, this is kind of a system of rewards that reinforces good behavior. And so say they go through a whole day and they don't yell, they don't act out, and they did their work, then you have little rewards for them doing correct behavior. It can be really anything, as simple as like a star sticker, like a Tootsie Roll, if their parents are okay with them having sugar. Of course, we want them to kind of be a little bit lower energy, so sugar might not be the best idea, but it could even be like having some time to play computer games on their tablet, like for 10 minutes if they worked on an assignment really well. Another one that can really help students with autism is structured playgroup. And this is allowing students to creating like a structured environment for the student with autism to interact with other students, like having a little bit, instead of just saying, go play, giving them a specific activity, limiting the number of kids, so that the student with autism doesn't feel so flung out on the social sea, that they know a little bit more about what's going on. And this is a way to help them practice social skills in a little bit more of a structured environment, so that when it's less structured, they'll feel a little bit less lost. All right, so I wanted to share some examples of differing severities and some ways that my family adapts their activities for my cousins. So my aunt, she has 2 boys that both have autism. This is my cousin. The one on the top is my cousin David, and the one on the bottom is my cousin Jojo. And David's 10, and I think Jojo is, oh no, David's older. He's like 11, and I think Jojo's 8 now. I'm really not sure. I should double check their ages, but they both have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. And my cousin on the top, David, is a lot more functional than my cousin Jojo. David started talking when he was, I think, 2 or 3, and he's had a lot of help, special services, but he's able to participate more in a regular classroom. He's able to express himself really fully when he has things he doesn't like. He's able to ask more for things that he wants. He can carry on a normal conversation. He really likes talking about history, and I'm a history teaching major, so he always asks me questions about history, and it's really cute. And sometimes he'll ask me questions, and I'm like, I don't know, let me look that up. Or he's really into geography too. So we have a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun talking with David about the things he's interested in. And then my cousin Jojo is a little bit more severe than my cousin David. He was nonverbal until he was about 5 or 6. And I was really surprised when I came back from my mission because he'd gotten a lot of therapy and was able to express himself a lot better. And so because Jojo has frustration with lack of communication, he has a lot more outbursts than my older cousin, David. But as he's been able to learn to communicate his wants and his needs and his frustrations a little bit better, those outbursts have dramatically decreased. And so it's cool to see the therapy that I don't know if therapy, but like the education that they're getting in action. And so I also wanted to share some adaptations that we use in my family and they differ between Jojo and David because David's a lot more functional than Jojo. He needs a lot more help with like daily living. David's pretty much self-sufficient at this point. But an example is when we play a family game. So a lot of times with my cousin David, we use the peer model. So I or one of my cousins will go up, and if we're playing a game where like you have to describe a word, we'll look through the bowl and make sure it's a word that he knows. And then if he's stumped, we'll like whisper some things in his ears, but he mostly can play by himself. But if he's up there by himself, he gets a little bit flustered. And so we have someone else up there to help him when he gets a little bit overwhelmed. And then my cousin Jojo, he can't really participate in word games fully because he has a very limited vocabulary and isn't really able to carry on full conversations with people at this point. But he can but he can act things out and doesn't always understand what we're doing, but a lot of times playing games with Jojo, letting him have a turn, turns it into a form of exercise for him. We let him get out some of his wiggles and he's happy to be participating. And so I think this really shows a good example of how your classroom adaptations are going to depend on the severity of the autism spectrum disorder that you're dealing with. If it's a really intense autism spectrum disorder, then you might have to do things more like exercise. And if it's one where the person's a little bit more functional and can carry on conversations, then you can involve peers more, and you can do a clear, anyway, there's a, the main point I'm trying to make is it depends a lot upon the severity, which adaptations you'll use. And as you get to know your students in your classroom, you will learn which adaptations and which strategies the students respond to best. So yeah, and here are my sources. These are the main two sources that I used, and I got to all of them through class website links. So